This is The Guide Gals, a modern, wedding-focused podcast by the experts at Here Comes the Guide. I'm Chelsea, a designer and inspired creative who's probably racked up over 8,500 hours on Pinterest and the friend who's going to shoot it to you straight.
And I'm Caroline, a social media manager who is obsessed with dogs as ring bearers and will inevitably cry over your wedding video. We've seen it from all sides. We've been brides, planners, bridesmaids, and have worked with standout brands throughout the industry.
Think of us as an extension of your wedding party and hang out with us as we share the ins, outs, ups, and downs of the road to I do.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Guide Gals podcast. Another week, another topic, another episode. And this week we're talking all about how to create a wedding timeline.
Yes, and for some of you listening, you might kind of feel like you already have this figured out. I know a lot of venues will supply like a sample one for you where you can kind of like fill in the blanks or make edits where needed, because truly like they've done the weddings like hundreds of times and they've got it figured out. So
Yes.
They really know a timeline. But we have a lot of tips and questions that you can ask yourself in this episode. So we definitely think it's still worth listening through.
Yeah, or maybe you're a couple who has no idea where to start, is still trying to figure out what the heck to include on a timeline. Well, then this episode is for you. We're going to break that all down on how to navigate this part of the wedding planning process.
Yeah, and I mean, with any event, especially weddings, like I know, you want it to go a certain way and all of that. So having this is really helpful to make sure that everyone knows what's going on, everyone's in the right place at the right time, like lots of moving parts. And also, you want to have a good time. You don't want to be stressed about what's going on the whole time. So if you just have this timeline as kind of like a guide or a worksheet to let everyone know what's up, things will go a lot smoother, stress-free.
Yes. So in this episode, what you can expect is some tips, some notes, some things that we're going to go over. We're going to go over some questions you can ask yourself to really help you navigate your own personalized timeline, and then we're going to go over a custom timeline that we've kind of created based off of a couple of things that we think might apply to you. So before we jump into all of that, though, of course, we're going to talk about our beverages.
You go first, Caroline. What are you drinking today?
It's not interesting. It's just ice cold water from my. Last week I think I did this too. I smacked my microphone. I'm sorry, everyone, if that was a horrible sound. This is my Stanley cup with just ice cold water because I have been dehydrated. So yes, that's it.
I think I don't know if I've ever been like properly hydrated. Like what I have water as well. I have electrolytes in there. It's a little bit more exciting.
What flavor?
Lime, element lime. I like it. I'm into it.
I like that. I do too. The citrus one is still my favorite. Raspberry close behind. Ooh, I tried the chocolate one.
Yeah, unfortunately I did too. And
Bad.
well, here's the thing. It says on there to enjoy hot. And I didn't realize it would be so good hot, like as a hot chocolate. I had it cold and it just tasted like milk to me. And I was like really trying to like, gulp it down because I didn't want to waste it. That was my bad. And I will be trying it again with hot water.
Crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I have to get another one to try with hot. Frick, I didn't read it either. Yeah, that was gnarly. That was bad. Okay, now everyone knows if you have Element, the chocolate flavor, try it hot. Or if you've already tried it, get in the comments, let us know.
Maybe some people do like it cold. Like I could see it being like almost like an iced coffee. It doesn't taste like that though. So.
Maybe if you blended it with ice too. I feel like it was blended.
Like chocolate syrup or something, like something delicious.
Yeah, to totally negate the like health part of it, but whatever. Whatever.
Okay, so to start off this episode, we're going to dive into a few timeline tips that we have for you. The first one is no matter what kind of wedding you're having, one thing is a constant, and timing is everything. That's true for like every kind of event or like plan, like anything that you're trying to organize. But there really are so many moving parts on the day of. So having everything mapped out is really important. I know I kind of mentioned this already before we got into the episode, but a venue might have like kind of a template for you. You can probably find 100 templates online as well, like stuff that you can just fill in the blank. It's your wedding is going to be unique. So there might be little different things that you need to adjust here and there. And that's really important to make sure that you actually look these things over and make sure that the timeline makes sense for the different things that you're planning to do on your wedding day. And I mean, I don't know, you know yourselves, like if you know like, hey, like I want to do this first, or I need to switch this here and there, I know I need like some sort of break at this point. So yeah, I mean, no timeline is going to be one size fits all. So there are lots of variables, and you should definitely, this is something you should definitely, you and your fiance should look over and make sure it makes sense for you guys.
Another piece of advice or a big tip that we have for you is to hire a wedding planner to help. They really are the people who can help not only to create this timeline, but to make sure it all happens accordingly. If you do have a limited budget, though, you could also try and find a coordinator if your venue doesn't already include that. Because at least for a coordinator, while they may not have their hands on the timeline far in advance, but they at least will be the people who will help that timing continue on the day of. The goal here, again, is to be fully present on your day. So to have someone else kind of step in and help with that piece of it can be super helpful. And they can be the ones to call the vendor who hasn't arrived on time, or to help make sure that this person knows where they're going at what time, to grab the family members who need to be in the right place for photos. So it's really just having somebody to help coach everybody around and make sure all of those pieces are moving correctly. And that can be a huge help for your day.
Yeah, we are big fans of planners for so many reasons. I know that this can seem like something that you're like, well, I don't need that. Like I can handle it. I don't need a planner. It's just an extra expense that I can avoid. But seriously, like making that investment, adding that, working that into your wedding budget, really they can be so helpful. They are so knowledgeable. They can even find ways to save you money. So yeah, big fans of planners. But if it's something that's really not in your budget and it's something that you do have to DIY, we have a lot of questions that can shape your wedding day timeline, as well as like really give you a guide to just like being able to put this together on your own. Also, if you're hosting like a weekend wedding, something that's like more than just a day long, you'll you'll definitely want to come up with a timeline for each day that you're celebrating. So that's really important. And yeah, like there's going to be different kinds of timelines like in place for all of those different days, the different events that you're hosting. And yeah. This next section we're going to dive into is going to be a lot of questions that you can ask yourself, which is going to make a lot of these things super clear as you're building it out.
All right, so now that we've kind of laid out some tips, tricks, notes, things that you should be aware of, we're also going to dive into quite a few questions to ask yourself. So some questions that you can ask yourself about the before the ceremony aspect for your timeline is, will the wedding take place at one venue, or will guests have to travel to separate ceremony and reception sites? This is something you need to think about before anything else, because the travel aspect is going to be huge, not just for your guests, but for you as well. So you're going to want to think about all of those parts before truly anything else. Once you have that nailed down, is it happening at one venue or separate venues? Will hair, makeup, getting ready happen at the venue or off site? This can depend on the venue. This can depend on your other ongoing events. Some places have spots where you can get ready, and that's perfect. Or you might have to designate a Airbnb, a person's home, for that space to get ready. And you can do some of your getting ready offsite and then bring some of it on site. We can talk about that later, but one question to ask yourself. Also, while you're getting ready, you're going to need breakfast, lunch plans.
Yeah. Don't forget the food and snacks.
No, that's so important. Is somebody going to be designated to do that? Are you going to have someone deliver it? Or is your mom going to make everything? I don't know. Probably depends on where you're getting ready, what kind of things you have available to you. And do you and your fiance want to have a first look before the ceremony? If so, you need to be on site at that point. You need the photographer to be there. All of these things that happen before the ceremony, really nailing down where is it happening, when is it happening, and as other things get fleshed out too, you'll see how all the rest of the pieces fall into place.
Yeah, and as we're like even like we're just barely getting into like the order of the day here, I'm sure it's starting to become clear that like this is not just stuff that you can do on the fly. Like especially I mean like it just stuff just won't happen and it would just be so chaotic and you guys would be so mad at each other. Like you'd be mad at your wedding party and your fiance and yeah, having a timeline is going to be
Key.
really great.
So key to the whole day. Yeah.
Yeah, and really, like you should not expect much of anything from yourself in terms of the day of. Like if you're ever having any type, no matter how small, of thought where you're like, you know what? Oh, like I'll just figure that out. No. Like do not do that. That is bad. You need to figure this out before the fact, like before the day, because on the day you're going to be so distracted, you might be nervous. And also like aside from that, you want to just be like having a good time, living in the moment, not having to like worry about checking anything off of some sort of list. Figure out everything in advance. Yeah. So now I'm going to go through a few questions that you can ask yourself in regards to the actual ceremony portion of your day. So the first one, if you're having an outdoor ceremony, what time is sunset? You'll also want to take advantage of golden hour for photos. So probably you'll want to have your ceremony wrapped up before that point so that you can just be you and your fiance, your wedding party, whoever, taking advantage of just getting those like really beautiful, candid, like couple photos during that time. For your grand entrance into the reception, do you plan to announce your entire wedding party or just the two of you? I'm like chuckling a little bit because we just talked about this, this portion of the day in our last episode, Trends That Are On Their Way Out. Listen to that episode if you haven't. It's a good one.
Yeah.
And then the last question I have for this section, will you do a receiving line or simply greet your guests at their tables during dinner? So if those things are important to you, think about them and make sure that you pencil it in. Don't just expect it to happen because things really do go so fast too.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. There are so many things within also the ceremony that we aren't talking about specifically because everyone's ceremony is different and there are things that you might want to factor into yours that personalize it too, but we're just again generalizing a lot of these things. Like an example is if instead of a receiving line or greeting guests at their tables, I've seen a lot of people like right after the ceremony, they're greeting everybody as they're walking over to the reception just because you're all in one place for the ceremony and then they like release you by rows, I guess. Give a quick hug. Hey, so good to see you. Thank you for being here. Can't wait to see you at the reception.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good idea. I mean, but if you're going to do that, let's think about the timeline again. Make sure that you're having your ceremony early enough so that you're not missing like the beautiful light for your photos. Because a lot of times people roll right from the ceremony. The couple is swept away by the photographer and videographer and it is like photo shoot time. For those like really gorgeous couple photos. So
yeah. And honestly too, you might want to schedule in some time here for somebody, not you, to wrangle all of your family members if you're doing family photos because this is a common time for that as well.
Yeah, a lot of them, it's like, oh my gosh, especially the groomsmen, they will, oh, the bar is open now. And then they'll start to go over there. No, like you should tell them if like you want to. I mean, I think what's best is especially if you have a rambunctious group of friends, get them wrangled in, get their pictures done, and do not release them to go get their drinks from the bar until they have gotten their picture taken. Like they're part of the wedding. So yeah, keep that in mind because I mean they're there to have fun too, of course. Of course, but they're also there on business. So
yep. Sorry, last thing about the ceremony I should mention too, there's a lot of vendors will be maybe have already arrived, but they may also be doing things while you're like getting married, while you're literally getting married at the ceremony. So I guess this might even be before the ceremony. If you have things for vendors, like if you have something that needs to get to the caterer, that needs to get to the person who's dropping off the cake, like if you have a special thing for, I don't know, whatever, pencil that into the timeline for like either putting someone as a point person for that or having it set aside and set up already beforehand. See, like there's so many moving parts because they're not going to bother you while you are literally getting married. Think about that beforehand. Make sure that happens before the ceremony so that the vendors can do their job while you're getting married. Sorry, we're getting rambly, but there are so many things to think about and we don't want you to forget. But some of the things also that are going to affect your timeline greatly are a lot of the traditions, these traditional aspects, like the first dance, like cake cutting. And they can be happening at different times depending on the wedding. I've seen it done so many different ways where some people, like, the first thing that they do at the reception is these traditions, and for other people it happens like periodically throughout the night. So some of the things that you might want to consider are, will you do a first dance? And are there any other special dances you want to include? Father-daughter dance, mother-son dance, anniversary dance, whatever. Are there any cultural traditions that you would like to include at the reception? That can depend on so many different things. I am not well acquainted with all of them, but there are so many special cultural traditions that you could include. Are there going to be blessings before dinner, or is there going to be a welcome toast? Who's giving those speeches, toast, whatever? And will you and your now spouse want to say a formal thank you toast or some sort of speech? Who else will have speeches? The best man, the maid of honor, parents, I don't know. And would you like to do a cake cutting ceremony? Is that going to be an official thing? Are you going to do a bouquet toss or a garter toss? Now, you take these things as you will. I was not somebody who really wanted to have a garter toss. I don't like that trend. Sorry. I guess it's not even a trend. It's a tradition. And speeches can get a little bit long. So this is also a good place, if you are doing speeches, put that in the timeline, but make sure everyone knows, y'all, we have 10 minutes for these 4 people to do speeches. Keep it quick. Those are some other timeliney things that really tie in with these traditions.
Yeah, and you don't have to do these traditions. We want to make that clear too. You totally can, but if you're not in love with any one of them, you can, like, feel free to completely ditch it. I don't think that as your guests are concerned, they're not going to care so much what traditions are done. They're going to care about, like the food and stuff like that, and seeing guys happy. Like they're there to celebrate. So you definitely don't have to adhere to those traditions. And then one little point on speeches as well. So I know that, like, sometimes it's different people will give different speeches, like best man, maid of honor. If you feel like you want to proofread those, you can do that. Or alternatively, if you want to be surprised and, touched about the heartfelt things that they're going to say on your actual wedding day, you could always assign this. Like, you could say, like, okay, like, my trusted maid of honor, I want you to proofread the best man's speech, and maybe vice versa, or whatever it may be. Right. You can totally do that and make sure that it's, like, up to standard. Make sure they're not saying anything that they think is totally hilarious but is really inappropriate and would embarrass you. These things are warranted. Yep. Okay. Next, I'm going to go through some questions that you can ask about the reception part of the day. So the first one, are there any other activities that you want to include? So this would be like late night snacks. If you're going to have those passed around, that has to be planned. Are you going to do, like, karaoke, like any type of, like, fun, I don't know, game or activity, anything like that you want to include? Make sure that that's penciled in. Does your reception venue have a curfew? So most of them do. Like, most have a cutoff time. And if you want to keep going after, like, if you want there to be an after party, there has to be some sort of plan in place. At the very least, like, hey, everybody, we're going to go meet over there at that place or something. How long will your reception be? You need to figure that out. That's probably going to be up to the venue, like I just said, with their curfew and stuff. And then how many hours did you contract your venues for? So your photographer, your videographer, your DJ, musicians, coordinators, etc. Like, you need to make sure that if you want your celebration to last till a certain time, the people that you want and need to be there, like, their contract should extend to that time as well. It is common for photographers and videographers to kind of leave before the event is totally over. That happens. But if you're planning on, like, dancing the night away until, like, 11 o'clock p.m., if the venue allows, you need the DJ to stay until then. So, yep.
Continuing on after that into after the whole party has ended kind of territory is, will you have a grand exit? Are you allowed to have sparklers, glow sticks, bubbles, blah, blah, blah? And are you going to have a getaway car that's something that you're going to want to know when that grand exit happens, when you need to get the car ready. Well, not you, somebody who's driving it, whatever. Or are you going to host an after party? How are people getting there? Is it at the same venue? What, like, there's even more details that go into that. And you might even have a whole separate timeline for the after party. But yeah, if you're thinking about having one that's like you want one timeline to blend really beautifully into the next one.
Okay, so now that we've answered all of these questions, hopefully you are able to go through them, make sure that you have an answer to each of them. Your wedding timeline should start to take shape based on that. So, for example, your rental starts at 12 p.m., so your wedding party has to get ready before that. You can change when you get to the venue. Your photos are starting to get taken right away. Like, you are starting to like paint the picture of what your wedding day is going to look like.
Yeah, and like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, your wedding might take place at two separate spaces. So then you're going to have to build in that travel time while staying within contracted hours for your vendors. So there's really a lot of things to think about for your wedding timeline to make sure all of those moving parts find a nice home to settle in.
Yes. So now we are going to run through an example timeline that we have for you. So this probably will be a little bit different than yours, but you know, like we said, hopefully yours is really taking shape and you're starting to get a clear idea of what it's going to look like. So that's great. But we have a very basic timeline, like I said, that we're going to walk you through just so that it like paints a really clear picture for what it's supposed to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and start off. I'm just going to read through this for you. So starting at 9 a.m., hair and makeup begins at the on-site bridal suite. Food and beverages. There will be mimosas available. So yep, that's all penciled in. 10:30 a.m., the groomsmen will arrive at a barbershop for haircuts and hot shaves. Very nice. At 12 p.m., noon, lunch is delivered to the wedding parties. So that's a really good one to have in there. Make sure that you guys are eating throughout the day. A lot of people don't eat like the whole day. 1 p.m., the vendor arrives at the venue, whatever vendor that may be. 2:30 p.m., an 8-hour photography session begins with all of the detail shots. 3 p.m., bridal and bridesmaids' portraits begin. 3:30 p.m., the groom and groomsmen arrive at the venue. They're dressed and ready for photos, fingers crossed. 4 o'clock p.m., the couple has the first look at a special location. 4:30, photography of full wedding party continues. 5 o'clock, the wedding party retreats out of sight. 5:15, the couple gets the first look of the reception setup. Detail photography continues. 5:20, the guest shuttles arrive and welcome drinks are passed. 5:25, guests are seated for the ceremony. The wedding party is staged for the processional.
And this is where the ceremony begins.
Yes.
5:30, and let's be honest, maybe 5:35, the ceremony begins. At 6 o'clock, the ceremony concludes. Newlyweds and witnesses sign marriage license. Family portraits follow, and cocktail hour begins. At 6:45, the couple moves to a sweetheart room for drinks and appetizers. This is a great time for you to just settle in and eat a little bit and also get to enjoy the day. At 7 o'clock, guests move to the reception space. Wedding party is staged for their grand entrance. 7:10, the grand entrance begins, followed by the first dance. At 7:20, the welcome toast by the father of the bride or another VIP guest. 7:25, blessing if desired. 7:30, dinner service begins. And by 8:30, champagne is passed and toasts begin. 8:45, thank you speech by the couple, followed by cake cutting ceremony. 8:50, the father-daughter dance, mother-son dance, and or other special dances. And then the dance floor opens at 9 p.m. At 9:45, the bouquet and garter toss happens, if that's your thing, or other late night snack service can begin. 10:45, last call at the bar. 10:55, last dance, and 11 p.m., grand exit, sparkler tunnel, and getaway, and the guest shuttles depart.
Awesome. And yeah, that is your entire wedding day wrapped up and tied with a bow. So that is like kind of what your timeline should look like. That's a really basic one. You know, the concrete things are set in their concrete places, but you will likely have a lot more details involved in that when you create yours. But no matter what your timeline does end up looking like, one thing to remember is build in a little bit of cushion time. If you notice, like there is like, you know, a good amount of time I mean, some are like a little bit quicker than others, but allow a little bit of breathing room. Like you probably don't want to have stuff like spaced 5 minutes apart. Like be very realistic. You're gonna have to take bathroom breaks in there. I don't know, redo your lipstick or fix your hair or like something
Yes.
throughout the day. So having a little bit of wiggle room is gonna be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, even in our like example timeline, we left 5 minutes for the guests to be seated. And it probably is going to take longer than that. So
It might,
just
yeah.
to be aware of that. And even like hair and makeup could take longer, wrangling all of your family and friends for photos. Transportation is, if transportation is required, you definitely need some buffer room for unexpected traffic or other things that could go wrong. And planning extra time for potential glitches is so crucial because any series of minor delays could actually end up creating a bigger issue than you may want. Even small setbacks at the beginning of the day could avalanche into like, oh, a dinner is an hour late. And we're not kidding. Like that can happen. And so building a timeline, being very cognizant of all the moving parts can help make sure that everything is going to go as smoothly as it possibly can.
Yeah, and it really ensures that like if one thing is like running behind or it's taking longer, then like that next step on the list is like spelled out right there. People don't have to start scrambling around to try to like save the day. It's just, okay, let's reference our worksheet and we'll see what the next task for us to do is. It'll be spelled out super simply.
And there you have it. Those are some of the questions, tips, notes that you should take into account. Again, not a fully comprehensive list because you might have a weekend wedding and we didn't talk about welcome celebrations or farewell brunches. But a lot of these things that we're talking about here, you can apply to any of the other events that you are throwing. And if you do have things that you want to hear more about for Wedding Timeline, get in the comments. Keep saying it because we will be there to answer. We love getting to walk through these things for you and hope that it helps for your whole wedding planning process.
Yes, we hope that this was helpful. And yes, if you do have any questions, episode suggestions, anything like that for us, you can reach out to us on our website. That is theguidegalspodcast.com. There you can also find a lot of free wedding planning resources and our full episode library. You can also find us on Instagram at the Guide Gals Podcast. You can reach out there with any questions and stuff too. We're always excited to chat with you. We're on TikTok as the Guide Gals Pod there, and on Instagram we share a lot of behind the scenes fun stuff. Every episode also has a video component, so we are on YouTube on the Here Comes the Guide YouTube channel. And yeah, this was a really fun one. I don't know, I always say that, but we really do have fun with this. And we are type A people. We like to be really organized, so building a timeline, we're all for it.
All for it. Yeah. Even if you feel like you don't need a timeline, you do.
You do.
Okay. I promise you do. And so that's what we're here for, to help make sure that happens. And until the next episode, that's it. So cheers.
Cheers. Cheers with our water.
Cheers.